there, Karen O'Connor of SingWise.com here, and today I want to talk really briefly about vocal strain, what it is, what causes it, and how to prevent it from happening to our voices. So this video is just going to be a general overview of some sort of basic causes, and in the next video on this topic, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to prevent strain, give you some specific strategies or tools that you can use, in particular how to sing high notes without straining. So stick around and also subscribe to this channel so that you'll receive a notification when that next vocal strain video is up. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about what vocal strain is and isn't, and what causes it. So with vocal strain, we're really talking more about an injury or a strain or pulling of one or more of the muscles inside the larynx, or the extrinsic laryngeal muscles, the muscles outside the larynx that are directly responsible for changing its position, the larynx's position inside the neck. We're not talking about the ligamentous edges of the vocal folds. That's the part of the vocal folds that's actually involved in vibration. There are injuries that can happen to the vocal folds, but usually when we're talking about strain, it's a muscular thing. So that feeling of strain can start out as a very subtle feeling of discomfort that grows in intensity as you continue to sing until it's sort of unbearable, or we may experience it as sort of a sudden and sharp pain that doesn't really go away, at least not for a while. So when we're thinking about this, let's use an analogy of athletics. So let's say we're a runner or we're involved in some sort of sport and we pull a hamstring, right? It's really kind of a strain that we've experienced. And that can happen for one of two general reasons. The first reason has to do with placing too great a demand on that muscle. Asking that muscle to perform with greater intensity, stronger contraction, we'll say, and for longer periods of time than it's either accustomed to or is prepared to do. So we haven't, let's say, strengthened that muscle enough. We haven't built up our strength or endurance in that particular muscle. And the second general cause of muscle strain, which is, truth be told, the most common, has to do with faulty mechanics or faulty posturing. So let's say we're using the example of a runner, and that runner pulls the hamstring. So what has likely caused that to happen has nothing to do with the runner's muscles not being built up in terms of strength or endurance. That runner's been running for a long time. What's more likely is that that runner has some sort of faulty mechanics in terms of his or her gait and how that foot steps down on the ground. So when there's faulty posturing or mechanics, that then means that the muscles of the foot and the leg are being asked to operate from positions of mechanical disadvantage. So they're operating in inoptimal positions or from inoptimal positions, which is going to make them more likely to experience strain. So now bring this back to the singing voice. The singing voice is made up of a lot of muscles that we can strain if we're using them with too much muscular force or contraction before they're ready. We're placing too many demands on them. Maybe we haven't really taken the time to build up the muscle strength or the endurance gradually over time safely. Perhaps we're singing repertoire that's not appropriate for us. Perhaps we're singing too high too soon. Maybe we haven't warmed up enough. Those are all ways in which we can misuse, abuse, or overuse our voices. Or if we're operating our vocal instrument or our vocal apparatus, our machinery, from faulty postures, using sort of faulty mechanics, we'll say. That means that the muscles are operating from positions of mechanical disadvantage because there's something about how we're shaping, forming our musical instrument that is forcing those muscles to kind of have to operate from inoptimal positions. And that is very likely to cause strain. And that really is a matter of learning better technique and being very mindful of our voice use, how we use our voices. So again, there are a lot of reasons why we might experience vocal strain. I just gave you sort of two general reasons, but if we get a little bit more specific now, we can talk about, first of all, what happens up here. A lot of the issues that we have to do with how we think about singing and how we think about using our voices. A lot of singers, for example, They think that when they sing higher notes, they have to squeeze and force and push and strain to produce those high notes. They develop this sort of fear reflex. So every time they approach a high note, this reflex kicks in and they start to, oh my goodness, I have to sing a high note. And they start to squeeze and they start to strain and use their muscles with excessive force. Now, this also comes down to training. What often happens is singers are in too much of a hurry to sing those high notes, to belt out those high notes especially, before they've secured or solidified their technique in the notes below that. And so the most important thing that we can do is not rush ahead of our vocal development. We don't just simply sing the whole octave up, even though it sounds terrible and feels terrible, and cross our fingers that it's going to get better. That's a really potentially dangerous way of approaching our singing. Again, some voices might be able to handle that at least for a time, but it's not necessarily the best or the safest way of approaching range extension. So don't be in a rush to sing too high, too soon, or to sing more intensely than what your instrument is currently able to handle. It's actually not going to get you there any faster. It's not going to get you to reaching your goals any faster. And if anything, it's going to present a roadblock for you when you start to strain your vocal muscles. So there are lots of technical reasons, again, why we might experience vocal strain. Some of it has to do with faulty breathing, incorrect breath support. Some of it might have to do with incorrect or poor registration, oftentimes pulling chest. And again, I'm not talking about using a chest mix, bringing that TA dominant coordination up, but allowing a little bit of a release as we get higher in the scale. I'm talking about just dragging up excessive vocal weight and leaving ourselves in this sort of locked position and not allowing much flexibility of the vocal instrument. That can lead us down a really, really bad path. So we have to be really mindful of that and find some balance in our registration. Using improper belting technique, we have to make sure that when we're belting, we're using a really good mix of muscle activity so that our voice system stays in balance and isn't overstressed at any time. Belting is a really intense singing task, and it's one of those things that we need to do properly or not at all. So we need to learn proper technique to begin with, and then as we're starting to learn to belt, we need to build up the intensity gradually over time. Don't go straight for those huge belted notes, especially the high ones. Build up your strength, build up your tolerance and your endurance gradually, safely, over time. This is all about patience. Patience ultimately is the thing that's going to save your voice from vocal injury. Another thing that nobody wants to talk about is posture. We tend to kind of overlook overall body alignment because we kind of think it's inconsequential. Well, I can sing from any posture, right? But we do have to remember that even that posture there actually places the extrinsic laryngeal muscles in inoptimal positions. And now we're asking them to work from these positions of mechanical disadvantage. So if we're talking posture, just making sure that, we're not doing this or we're not doing this and, we're keeping everything kind of in a good place, having good balance. That's also going to help our breathing. And again, if some of the issues that we're having with vocal strain or the cause of our vocal strain is poor breath support, posture is going to help a little bit with that. And then finally, we want to make sure that when we're singing, we're doing so from a place of optimal health and well-being. And so if we're really, really tired, we haven't had adequate sleep, it's going to be harder for us to properly energize our sound, but also to really mentally focus on what it is that we're doing, to really think about our technique. Sometimes singers develop vocal injuries or strain when they're trying to sing while sick with colds or what have you. So singing with a cold, I've been doing that a little bit today and yesterday, isn't necessarily going to be injurious. We just have to be really mindful. Just don't overdo it. Don't ask too much of your instrument while it's kind of under the weather. And probably the biggest thing that you can do to prevent vocal strain or injury is develop a really strong sense of kinesthesia, a very acute awareness of how things feel when you sing, A lot of singers sort of overlook these very subtle feelings of things not being 100% right, and they just figure, oh, you know, it's just the day, or it'll get better, it's just because it's new. If something doesn't feel even the slightest bit correct, if it just feels slightly off, you need to go back and restart. Reset your vocal instrument. Take a different approach, or take a break and wait until you can consult with your singing teacher before attempting that same task again, just to make sure that you're on the right track and you're applying correct technique to it. But really start to develop that strong sense of awareness, because that ultimately is what's going to save you from vocal strain. All right, so please stick around for that next video on vocal strain. I don't know when I'm going to get it up, but I'll try to get it up as soon as possible. In the meantime, please click the thumbs up button on this video to let me know that you appreciated the content, and also subscribe to this channel so that you'll know when that next video is up. Thank you so much for watching.